right, folks, well, this is the next step in our web series on our new to us XJS. We purchased this out of basically a storage unit where it had sat for the last 2 to 2.5 years unused, and basically we're working on bringing it back to life. So I think in our last episode we really were investigating the power top issues that we were encountering. Basically issues being when we tried to lower the top, the rear quarter windows go down, but the top was not lifting, and we could hear a fluid noise in the back corner where one of the cylinders were. So in the last episode we pulled the quarter panels out and all the rear interior so we could expose the cylinders, and sure enough there was a leak coming from the driver's side top cylinder. So since then we ordered new cylinders, they've come in, and we're going to work today to rectify that issue. So hopefully, if things go smoothly, by the end of this episode, we potentially could have a functioning convertible top, which will be a huge step in getting the car back on the road. So hope you follow along with us, and we'll walk you through kind of what we have to do to fix this, any issues we encounter, and yeah, let us know what you think. And if you haven't considered subscribing, we would really appreciate it if you did. If you like these type of cars, we are posting on a weekly basis content on, these older Jaguars, our classic cars like the 59 Chevy and the 65 Mustang. We also have our old Ford trucks, and then we usually have a few vehicles that rotate in and out of our schedule as well. So, if you like the content we're producing, we really appreciate the likes and subscribes. It certainly helps us out and allows us to really continue to grow the channel. So we really appreciate your support and hope that you follow along for the long term. Okay, so for those that followed in the last episode, you probably remember we got the interior all torn apart. And this right here was our culprit. So you can see we have some rags in here sort of soaking up any of the excess fluid. But basically we're going to get in here and hopefully remove these cylinders. Seems that they're clamped in right here with this hardware, so we have to undo these on each side, and then the fluid line. So there's one down here at the bottom, down here, and then I believe there's one at the top as well. So yeah, we'll set up camera up here so you can see us kind of wrestle these things out, and then we can compare them to the new cylinders, make sure they look good. And just for reference, these are the new cylinders that we received. So, other than not being black, they at first glance look correct. So, yeah, we'll get the ones out of the car, and then we'll see if they are going to work for us or not. Well, good news. We got the hydraulic cylinders out. This one right here was the one that was still functioning. This, as you can see, is all shiny from the fluid, was the one that failed. It's kind of interesting, the bodies on these are plastic, so I definitely see why the manufacturer of the new one says that the replacements are better than OEM. So we got these with aluminum bodies on them. So there's a few things we're gonna have to swap over here. Looks like on the ends we've got these rubber or kind of plastic bushings. So we'll swap those over, and then obviously we have to get these fittings off of each end. Make sure we're good. And then I guess we have to probably extend the rams on these too, just so that we can get them installed. Overall procedure, not too bad. There's like a little spring clip that I'll show you guys when I go back in the car that kind of holds the dowel in for this. Other than that, there's just 2 bolts that hold the pivot bracket on the ram. I did have to cut this tape that kind of held the lines in place. Probably will tape the new ones once I verify that everything's working and leak free. But yeah, all in all, it came out. I think the biggest thing that I would recommend to anyone though is really just be careful of the fluid leaking. The first cylinder I took out, some fluid leaked out. Luckily it wasn't catastrophic. I was able to just kind of clean it up quickly, but I would caution you on that. So yeah, with that, I'm going to start assembling these new rams, and then we'll take a look inside the car and I can kind of show you where we're at. Well, not too bad. The new rams are assembled. So you can see down here, we've got the little brass fittings. Those did have a sealant on them from the factory, so we didn't have to add any additional. I just made they were done up pretty snug. I would say, knowing these bodies are aluminum, just be mindful of how tight you do this. You don't want to pull a thread out. So just be cautious with that. You don't want to crank it down too much, but be mindful that it is under hydraulic pressure, so you definitely want to seal. Other thing, we took the little plastic bushings out. I would say, this car is on its way towards 30 years old, so these are slightly brittle, so you have to just be cautious when teasing these out. I just used the screwdriver and got under the edge like this just to get under it, and slowly worked my way around. Once I got one out, I actually used the edge of the screwdriver and sort of just pushed the other one out because the material is a little thicker on the edge here. And as you'll see in the time lapse, I actually used this C-clamp to press them into the end of the cylinder. That way you get nice even force and you don't risk cracking them. Other than that, the only real thing was to extend the rams. You'll probably see in the time lapse they sort of just released. I think there was a vacuum in these just to stop moisture building up in them while they're in storage, so they sort of jumped out at me. But I'm gonna just kind of give everything a wipe down, and then we're gonna head back to the car, do the same in there, kind of clean everything up inside the interior, make sure all the residual hydraulic fluid from the top is cleaned up so we have a nice clean surface. And then yeah, I think really from there we're going to start the reassembly process. So yeah, you'll join me here in a few minutes as we start the cleanup process, and I'll kind of show you what we're doing in there. All right, well, we're on to the reassembly. We do have a little bit of a thunderstorm coming in here, so we'll see how much we can get done before the weather gets nasty. Picked up some simple green. I'm going to clean out the wells where the hydraulic cylinders are, just make sure there's no oil residue, and basically make sure that everything's nice and clean, how it would have been from the factory. And then I'm going to start the reinstall process. So we'll see if we can get these cylinders in here. It looks pretty straightforward. It really just appears to be a couple of bolts that hold the clamp down, and then we have to hook up both hydraulic lines on each side. If we get that done, then I guess next step's going to be refill the reservoir and give the system a test. Let's see if basically it works. So with that, let's get started on putting this back together. Probably point out a few areas that I'm cleaning up, and then we'll get some time lapse of the reassembly process. Okay, so this is really the bad side. This was where the leak was. You can kind of see the sheen here on the wheel well, and there's a little bit of a sheen down here. We've obviously got some paper towels, just making sure none of the lines leak while I was gone. But, you know, we're going to just spray this down. We don't want the car smelling like hydraulic fluid in here, and we don't want it to damage the paintwork over time either. So I'm going to get this all wiped down with some Simple Green, and let's see if we can get these cylinders in before it starts storming. Alright, well, that was a bit of a bear. Everything went pretty smoothly, but the little dowel that goes in the top of the hydraulic ram just did not want to go in. It really fought me. Not sure of a good solution on this yet. I'm going to try it on the other side once this rain clears. Unfortunately, on a little bit of a weather delay here with getting this figured out tonight. But we have one ram in. I think just to put the safety clip on the dowel, I'm going to have to basically cycle the top one time just for everything to align. And then I think from there we should be able to kind of get the last clips in, leak check it, assume everything's working. Then we can, you know, put the interior back together and go for a drive with the top down. So I'll check back in. Maybe it'll be later tonight. If not tomorrow, we'll see if we can get this buttoned up. Rain delay. Classic Florida. Alright, well, we're back out here. Day 2 of this. And just like yesterday, we have some storms rolling in, so we'll see how far we can get. But basically, had pretty good success yesterday. Both rams are in. The real issue I ran into, and you'll probably see this on the time lapse, is that the little dowels that hold the top of the cylinders into the top mechanism, they're very snug, and obviously you don't want to damage the top when you're trying to push it through. So I had to wrestle those in. I did do that successfully. However, the little spring clips right now are not fitting. So my goal is that I'll fill the system, cycle it enough to get all the air out, and then really the plan is to hopefully open the top maybe like halfway so I can get a little better access to the dowels, and hopefully I can kind of crimp them in there a little bit better and get the safety pins in. So let's see if we can spin this around real quick. There we go. So here's the cylinder, and it's kind of up in here is where the pins are. Kind of, if I set back, it's tucked way back in there, so kind of doing it blind, and you can't really see when everything's lined up. But the new cylinders are in. This one I just have to put the little clamping bracket on, so I'm going to do that today. That's going to be really my first step. And then if we look over here, you can see the other one is installed already. So I think, you know, probably 5 or 10 minutes, and then we can work on the basically like the bleeding procedure. And you know, haven't done that before, but I imagine you know, we just have to open the top of the reservoir, and we will get some fluid in there, and then we'll just slowly run the pump and bleed all the air out of the cylinders, and hopefully somewhere along the way the top will decide it's going to start opening. So let me get started with this, and we'll check back on a status update here in a few minutes. Alright, well, we got the cylinder hooked up. Like I said, I didn't put the safety pins in yet, but that's okay. We'll see if once we actuate the top and get it working, if we can sneak those in. Right now, I have taken the lid off the reservoir, and we're going to see if we can top it up with some fluid and then start cycling the pump. So it's going to be a little fiddling around here, but I think, you know, hopefully once we get some hydraulic pressure in there, things will start moving in the right direction. Okay, so this is the pump. There's a cover that sits here, and basically this gives access to battery that's kind of down in this area. And then we got a rack of relays, ECU, the hood control module as well, and of course the pump. So I've taken the lid off, and I've had to make a little makeshift funnel because all mine are too big. But I'm hoping this little guy, I can get some fluid down in here and top everything up. And then, yeah, I'll start cycling the pump and see what happens. So fingers crossed. All right, well, success. The top works. Took a few cycles of the pump to get all the air out the system. I found what worked is really cycle the pump and the roof started lifting, and then I helped it with my hand to shut all the way, or should I say go down the whole way. And by doing that, it pushed a ton of air into the reservoir. I let it sit, you could hear it kind of bubbling, and then I topped the fluid reservoir back up. Then I would close the top and basically repeat that cycle. Where I'm at now is basically the reservoir has a lot of small bubbles in the fluid. So I'm going to let that sit and just kind of let that all kind of dissipate, and probably come out here a little later today, see if I need to top the fluid up, cycle the top again, and leak check everything. And then, hey, let's take it for a spin around the neighborhood with the roof down and enjoy it. We'll leak check all basically the fittings on the cylinders one last time. And then Josh and I are going to get back into the interior. It was a little grubby when we bought the car, so we're going to start cleaning that up as well, just to really get the full experience of all the nice leather in there. So yeah, I'll do a quick update, and we'll get some good video footage of the top actuating a little bit later once we're done. But all in all, first thoughts are success. So yep, check back with you guys here soon. All right, well, we're back. Just a quick update. It's a little hard to see in here, but that is the reservoir fill line right here. And so you can see I've got it topped up. Basically letting the system kind of, all the bubbles come out. It sat for a few hours, but it made a difference, and I had to top it up. For us, it took nearly a whole quart to refill the system and get all the air out. So this is kind of where we're at. Still all stripped out here. I was also, and kind of an important thing to note, so if we come down here, this is the top of the cylinders that we replaced. And these are the little safety clips I was talking about earlier. These are next to impossible to put in with the top up. So what I did is I had got these dowels in far enough where I knew that they'd stay in place. And basically when we cycled the top, once it was down like this, I was able to kind of, with some pliers, squeeze the dowel through till it was all the way, and then I could get these clips in relatively easy. So that's just a little tip for anyone that might be doing that or doing this service. It'll make your life a lot easier. Other than that, just need to get some tape on these lines. They were taped when we took the old ones out. I think it's just to hold the lines in place really, so they don't rub and risk cracking. So we're going to do that, and I'm going to work on just a final wipe down of everything with the Simple Green to make sure there's no residual fluid. And then we're going to start getting this interior back together, and we'll see how it goes, but maybe we'll be at a point where we can go for a spin with the top down here later today. So I'll check back in a little bit and give you guys some updates. Okay, so quick update. Most important part, Josh showed up, so that means we're going to actually get stuff done. So we got everything cleaned up down here. This is like the sound insulation mat. We soaked up the last little bits of fluid and kind of just cleaned out this whole bottom area with Simple Green. Also cleaned like the hydraulic cylinders, and we have got them taped, so I'll show that on this side. The tape is really just designed to hold these lines in place. The cylinder does pivot like this as the top actuates, so it just stops them from fraying or anything like that. And then we have this sound mat on the back of kind of the hood bin as such. We're going to work now on getting kind of the interior trim panels in on both sides, and then the seat will follow. What I'll say is, in our last video, we had a bit more detail on how to do the disassembly, and this follows the same in reverse. We're yet again chasing basically a storm, so we're going to just kind of try and get this knocked out, and we'll provide a couple of updates along the way. So stay tuned for an update here in a minute.
All right, so the weather is starting to come in, but we did manage to get the sides back in place. They went in a lot easier than they came out, actually. So again, check out the previous video if you want to know how those come apart, but they went together much easier than they came apart. So take a look here and see what we're working with. And they came out beautifully. So we're now going to work on getting the seat back in next, and then the seat base, and we're going to get the top up, and we should be good. So the back seats went in trouble-free, all went together really nice, and we just gave them a quick wipe down. They're going to get a more thorough clean in the near future, but they came together very nicely. So what we're actually going to do, we are going to give this thing a little bit of a wipe down with any remaining time we have. You see all this is just dirt from someone's arm resting on it, and I gave it a preliminary check, and it looks like it will definitely come off. Honestly, it's pretty gross once you see what it's supposed to look like. So we're going to do a bit of cleaning here, and we'll do hopefully a bit of a before and after, so you can kind of see why you should always clean your driver's side armrest. And James also cleaned the shifter knob, and we'll spare you on that one. That was pretty gross too. So we gave the door a wipe down, but I saved a little bit for you so you could see side by side. This is what it looked like when we bought the car, and this is what it's supposed to look like. So as you can see, that is a huge difference. So the cleaning is well worth it. So we're going to finish out this armrest now. Nice. Look at that. Majestic. Well, I would say that's a pretty fantastic result. We're pretty impressed with how quickly the top actuates. Honestly, we did not expect it to move as quickly as that, so it's kind of a cool system. I mean, James did all the legwork on it, but as you probably saw, it was relatively straightforward. Definitely something you guys can do yourselves, so hopefully this was useful video for you. And one more thing we're actually going to show you. You probably noticed that it doesn't recede all the way down into the car. Being an older style top, it actually came with a cover that you put over this. So we're going to actually put that on so you can see what it looks like with the cover in place. That way, this is kind of the finished product, so you cruise around with the top down. So James is starting to put on his side, but I just figured I'd give you a quick how-to on these. So you probably noticed these little loops on the top here, which are like little fabric loops. And on the tonneau cover here, you have these little hooks. And you start by basically hooking the hooks through the loops. And then once those are in, you have your snaps here. And you pull it taut and you snap them down. So we're going to take care of that, and we'll show you how it looks.